And of course, many of you know that in the old days that I knew this man, John Lilly, and he had his isolation tank experience with the two lights and all that. And then years later, I had my own sort of near stroke experience where I had one light. Of course, it was only a big pain on one side of my mind, but I saw one of these pulsating lights as well. Didn't realize it at the time, didn't realize it actually until playing TV. But the point is that life thrives on thresholds. We're always about this mono thinking, what life is. It's a thing that exists on the threshold between light and dark and heat and cold. Which brings me to this very important subject, at least to me. Dyadic reality. If it's true that it's dyadic, that's kind of inherently paradoxical. I'd like to go through the points of what I think are the major paradoxes of this reality. Yeah, embrace the paradox. The paradox of one and two. How about that shadow? Hey, everyone on this planet is obsessed with the one. Whether they be Abrahamics or whether they be Eastern or whether they be New Age or whether that, oh, it's all the one. Oh, you see other people, it's all an illusion. Well, I don't know where they come up with this idea. It just sounds heavy and all that. I'm here to say that I actually believe that you and I are different people, okay? I believe that there is a me and that there's all this other shit that's happening and other things. But here's the thing. If there is all one, well, if we define something as one, we're also defining what's outside of the one. I mean, it has to be. You can't just keep saying, well, it's one and it's one. You can say it, but for there to be one, there has to be what is not one, i.e. two. But if there is two, there has to be two ones. So this is actually the core paradox of all of reality. I shit you not. Of course, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. The paradox of light. Light exists as both a particle and a wave at the same time. A particle and a wave are antithetical. And although there are people who say, well, that's just because we don't understand light, to the degree that we observe it now, we see these two behaviors. Again, people say, well, it's just an illusion. It's really not. No, people have been told and brainwashed on this planet that it's all one. And I'm here to say, I'm sick of the brainwashing. Light exists as both particle wave, and that is a paradox. Then the paradox of color. Color manifests from a dyad of additive light, which is light, and subtractive light. You have a theater and you blow red, green, and blue light out and it makes white. You have a printer and you have C, M, and Y ink, which is the opposite of RGB, by the way. And you have to add in a black layer because for some strange reason, unless you get these values exactly the same, you usually end up making like a dark navy or so. And since there are a lot of things that just need black and white when you print, they add it. That's why there are 3 or RGB, but a fourth when you do CMYK. This would be additive, and this would be subtractive. And the dyadic system is how you see color. Then there'll be the paradox of sight. You have to have light to see, but total light is just as blinding as total dark. We see partiality of light and dark. And for years people said, oh, there's no such thing as dark. It's just the absence of light. Well, okay, but now they talk about dark matter and all that. Again, seems to me there's two things. The paradox of digital and analog. This one has consumed my mind now since the 1980s. It's basically the particle and wave paradox, but in systems of recording or measuring reality. We can measure them digitally, or we can measure it analogically. We can record it digitally or record it analogically. The thing about digital, where does it end? Where is the frontier between pixels? That frontier is an analog concept. I shit you not, it is. Also, does the grid ever move? And even though you're hearing digital music now, it has to manifest itself in analog and go out into the air so that it can go in your ear and register in your mind. Digital might be quite inert. There are people who think, and there is lots of evidence, I would say, that the brain could work in a digital way. But even so, when your neurons fire, it reaches a potential of electricity before it crosses the synapse, analog. These two concepts are antithetical, but codependent. So the paradoxical. Yeah, I said that already. The paradox of language. Language is a set of agreed assumptions. Like we all agree that when I say booze, you know that it means liquor. We agreed on that. That's a set of assumptions. Of course, assumptions obscure communication and actually carry no information. I suppose if we talked about this for a few decades or days, we might figure out that the assumptions are indeed a set of information and something like that. But, the classic phrase, don't assume. Well, everyone assumes. You couldn't talk if you didn't assume. As a subtopic within information, everyone's interested in logic, so it seems. But I could tell you now that if I said, oh yeah, that's a really great ad. I love that ad. I think that's the best ad I've ever seen. We'd know that I was lying, all right? And conversely, if I went, I don't like that ad. I don't like, emotion. Talking here to Spiegel. I can say, good dog. You're a really good dog. Think away. The tone and emotion accounts at least for half of the message. Okay? So, interesting stuff. The paradox of maps, of course, maybe my favorite of all the paradoxes, and rolled it into the show, and it's not only a true thing, but it's my get out of jail free card for all of this horseshit, which is, if you think I've left out part of the story, I'll just say, well, I'm doing a map. I'm just giving you the key points. If you had a map that showed every single atom of the earth, it would be useless. One of the map's key things is to strip out the bullshit that you don't need. So what's left off of a map is at least as important as what is included. The paradox of humor, also another one, near and dear. Because laughter arises from innate truths and gross falsehoods. from great joy, but also from pain and anger. You know, there's this phenomenon sometimes when there's a tragedy at the end of the show, people laugh, and it's not that they're laughing like, oh, that guy got killed. It's a reaction. Conversely, the paradox of tears. You cry when you're sad, of course, except when you have tears of joy. WTF, everyone. Now, I think this is sadly misunderstood. The paradox of love. Of course, love is nurturing. But oftentimes what's needed, like Mike Pence, he needs discipline. He needs challenge. Half of love is tough love. And when we hand out participation trophies to all those children, look, we've made a class of incels. We've made a bunch of guys who don't think they need to do anything. They just lay around. The paradox of tolerance. This is another one in our face nowadays. In order for tolerance to flourish, we must be intolerant of some views, like Nazis, or people who want to kill others, or people who say, you know, it's a paradox. And an important one, people sometimes when I've talked about this, people get surprised. This one, the paradox of salt. You know, I've always wondered, they talk about those people are the salt of the earth. You realize that when you spread salt on the earth, it's really bad for your crops. Unless, of course, you're growing asparagus. And asparagus loves to grow in salty ground. But anyway, the oceans. The ocean's actually a big antiseptic pool, like the Earth's septic pool. It really is. Where all of our poop and all that shit runs down, and because it's salty, it purifies it. And then it evaporates as fresh water. So we need salt, but you know, just don't put it on your fields. Aye, the paradox of life, also maybe known as the paradox of eating, but you must kill to live. And I'm sorry, you must kill to live. And both animals and plants are alive. You must eat stuff that grew, and I guess someone could say you could just go around and find things that had already died and eat those. Okie dokie. That's a segue into the paradox of knowledge, because the more you know, the more you don't know. And that's about all you can say about that. And if you know that you don't know, in some cases that's wisdom, but in other cases it's just patheticness. So the paradox of scale, something I was interested in early on as an artist, that you could not see everything at once. Like I can't see the atoms in my hand here. But likewise, if I wanted to see where I lived and zoom out into space, then I couldn't see me and all that. So what you see is based upon how big you are, and what we experience is very much based upon our scale, both in geography and our scale in time. Something that I've learned by drawing 10,000 mandalas, the paradox of symmetry. Symmetry cannot exist without asymmetry. And I know there's physicists at quantum level talking about supersymmetry and all that. Symmetry in all dimensions at all times is inert. Basically, you have to have something asymmetric to be symmetric with. And we can talk longer about it, but I believe I can show this graphically. And the paradox of the proselytizer. Those who talk about religion and spiritual beliefs are assholes. This paradox held me up for maybe 20 years. Of course, to assert one's views about the divine or the mystical, it's totally egotistical behavior. To be certain is a certain way to be wrong. And this performance, the entire endeavor of my life, is doing what I claim to despise.